Thank you guys for your patience today, and especially to our online crowd. I know that we're behind schedule, but we really appreciate everyone being here today. We have a panel discussion talking about cancer. Um, so I'm excited to introduce, we have three panelists, and I'll let them kind of seal the show because their stories are more important than mine. We have Danella Thompson, Katy Tessman, and Matt Gentles.
All right, thanks for the introduction. So as she said, my name is Danella Thompson. I'll share a little bit about my story and then we'll let the rest do the same. So I was diagnosed July of 2024 with stage 2 triple negative breast cancer. No family history. I found a lump in the left breast myself. Crazy because instantly I knew what it was. The first thing that many of us do, we hop on Google, and I found for whatever reason it's more prominent breast cancer in the left breast. I made an appointment. I advocated hard for myself, being that I'm so young, family history. The scheduler on the phone was like, oh, is it around your time of the month? You know, the breast can be different. Then I'm like, lady, I know my body. Please let me get in. So that's another thing that I want to share with everyone it's really important to advocate for yourself. Because had I been like, you know what, maybe you're right. Because sadly, I've met women who that has been their story where they didn't think it was anything. And by the time they find out, it's their stage 4. So I went in and they of course had to do the biopsies, the mammogram, all the rigmarole. And it was confirmed stage 2 triple negative breast cancer. That was really, well, at the time, no, I take that back. You never at that moment find out what stage you are. They have to do like a PET scan and a lot of other things. So I always tell people that first time you hear of the diagnosis is like gut wrenching. You're scared because you don't know what stage you are. You don't know. It was really, really scary. I actually ended up having a really bad panic attack. But I just, prayed on it and tried to think positive. I think mindset is very, very important during that time. But then once the further testing is ran, you find out your diagnosis stage, treatment plan, then you can kind of, you find some peace in it. And so that's what I did. I ended up going to Mayo. They had an amazing clinical trial. It's called the I Spy 2 clinical trial. I only had one chemo drug. Oh, I'm sorry. What was that? Oh, you too? Oh, awesome. Yeah. You guys too. Yeah, it was amazing. I only had one chemo drug, one immunotherapy, only 4 times, 3 weeks apart. I had a pathological complete response. So they do it in phases. I didn't even have to go to phase 2 or 3. Didn't lose my hair. I mean, I definitely experienced some shedding and thinning, but never felt sick. My white blood cell count didn't drop. It was a really amazing experience. And then I had lumpectomy and then radiation. And my 1 year of radiation that I completed just President's Day made my 1 year. So thank you guys. So it's really still fresh and new, but this is such a full circle moment for me because I was very open with my journey. I shared it all on Facebook, and so many women just reached out like, thank you for being so open. You're giving me hope, or my grandma hope, but I reached a girl, her situation was very similar to mine. She too had triple negative breast cancer around the same age. I told her about my experience at Mayo, but that Mayo's just not an option for some people, just the distance and their work schedule, children's schedule. But I said, you know what, go here. So she went here. They too had the I Spy 2 clinical trial. She too had a pathological complete response here. So this is just such a full circle moment for me. So happy to be here. And that's a little of my story. I'll pass it along now. All right.
This thing is on? Yes. I'm Katy Tessman. I was diagnosed when I was 39. It was my 40th birthday. I went and got a double mastectomy, and that's when they told me it went to my lymph nodes. And so stage 3, estrogen receptive. My boys were 6 and 3 at the time. My 3-year-old and I were still nursing. I didn't feel a lump. I thought I would be a really great person for a nurse to learn how to get the boob squish just right. But no, turns out there was something there. And when I turned 50, I was deathly afraid of a colonoscopy because those big tests turned out to be something scary. The colonoscopy surprisingly turned out to be great. And the one mammogram that I had was awful. Who knows? I recently celebrated my 16th year of being cancer-free. I'm old. But that was my grandma plan. I wanted to live old enough to become a grandma. So I did the double mastectomy, even though cancer was only in one side. And my cancer surgeon said, hey, by spring, you'll be able to wear a swimsuit and no one will know. No, thank you. So it was really great to be, to find who I was going to not want to talk to and who I was going to talk to. But I needed to figure out how to talk to my children. I needed to talk to my 3-year-old about weaning really quickly. And I went to the library to look for a book. There was nothing at that time for me to read. To them, it was all like dark watercolors and long narrative and about saying goodbye to grandpa. Nope, I'm not going to read anything like this. So I decided to compare cancer to a garden. As we all know, it's a bad weed and we need to dig it out, root and all. And it isn't like Creeping Charlie. It can't crawl over to your body and grow. This is just in mama's garden. So when I started to grow my hair back from the chemotherapy and find my energy, I realized I wrote the book I was looking for. Those conversations that I was having with my children was exactly what I wanted to be able to share. And so after 12 rejections from regional publishers, I self-published. It's called Our Mama is a Beautiful Garden. And it's told in the voices of my boys, Lewis, who is 6, and Max, who is 3. And Patterson Dental gave me a grant to put a copy of each one of my books in cancer centers throughout Minnesota. And it's still getting published and shared all over. So it's here if you want to take a closer look. And then fast forward 10 years, 10 years cancer-free, 10 years of being on tamoxifen. Whew, I decided to write a song, and it's called Hero Now Crowned. And I published this lyric picture book. Both of the illustrators are from the Twin Cities because Minnesota is such a beautiful place. And this is a song to remind us that we are all the hero in our own story. Our cancer is our own. Nobody else's cancer is the same as ours. Our family is ours. And this, I think, could really speak to a lot of people. So I'm really happy to be here, and I am an open book. Oh, and I wanted to say, I'm old enough for my implants to need replacement. So I just did that. Oh, the camera. So if anybody has questions about implants, anything about what I did about the big swap, I'd be happy to talk about that. All right, your turn. We share this? Yeah, good.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matthew Gentles. I come to this panel with a different perspective. I am not a survivor. I am a therapist, a trauma-informed therapist. I'm also a doctoral student, and I come to this panel bringing a perspective of intersectionality of being a person of color and intersectionality of mental health and fighting the stigmas that comes with a cancer diagnosis. And yeah, I would talk about also the superwoman complex that a lot of women go through with the diagnosis of breast cancer, right? There's this trap that you have to do this alone and protect your family from it, when really it's a familial thing. It's something we have to go through together. And also just talking about, there's a lot of medical mistrust when it comes to these diagnoses. There's a lot that doctors not necessarily know, but more of don't understand from your perspective, because you're all, a professional about your body and what's best for your body. And lastly, dispelling the stigma around shame, because I know I was talking to these ladies earlier about cancer is not a flaw. It's a cell mutation, and that should not impact the way you look at yourself and look at how you show up in the world. And yeah, I'm happy to talk to anyone more from a mental health standpoint. Thank you.
It's going to go is we're going to next briefly share about what's one key lesson we have learned about communicating with family about cancer, whether that be professional, survivor, or a caregiver. And then after that, we're going to open it up if you guys have any inputs, questions, or anything. And then if not, we'll just go on to some key questions that I think will really be beneficial. So for me, this is really unique. And we were kind of talking about this in the lobby. So I think when it comes to open up and sharing with your family, that's very personal. Every person deals with that how they want. Like I have a 15-year-old and then I have a 9-year-old, but they were basically 2 years younger when it happened. So my older one, I was very open, fully transparent with it. My daughter, and just knowing her personality type, she's a worry bug. I made a vow to myself that like, I am not going to tell her until I have to. If all my hair starts falling out or I get really sick or something, then of course I will. But there was just something in me there. I'm like, I'm going to be okay. And still to this day, my daughter has no clue. I am going to, of course, have that conversation when she gets a little bit older. But I just, like I said, her personality type, if I would have told her, she probably would be crying like multiple times every single day. She's just so sweet and just sees the world as unicorn and butterflies. And anytime, like she's just so sweet. Like anytime she sees someone hurting or sick or in pain, she's just like, I feel so bad for them. And mom, do you think they're okay? And so that's just a personal decision me and my family, we decided to take. But I also look at that as a blessing where like, wow, I went through something so traumatic and my daughter had no clue. Again, I only had to get chemo once every 3 weeks. I started September 11th. By November 15th, I was done. I never got sick, nothing. So to her, in her eyes, and I in my radiation that I did, I literally was driving back and forth to Mayo every single day. I live in Robbinsdale, so Mayo's about an hour and a half. I would get my kiddos onto the school bus, drive out to Mayo. You know, radiation is 15 minutes, and get back in my car. So while I was doing, she had no clue. So it'll definitely be a convo to have when she's older, but that's how I dealt with that with my kiddos. So yeah.
Great. Protecting kids or meeting your children at their level is important because being the mom that they need you to be is really key. So but you shouldn't bottle it in. You need to see a therapist. And I did music therapy. And surprisingly, it was really good. And my parents moved in with us. And so my mom got to be my mom. And so then I got to be my boy's mom. And my mom would make the appointments for me because calling and saying, hello, I need help was no fun. So it was really great to have my mom make those appointments for me. And in my book, I talk about the books that we did read were about superheroes. And you mentioned that there's that superwoman complex, and it's true. And we did talk a lot about superheroes. And I'm trying to find the page, but I said to my boys, one of the superhero qualities is asking for help. And so I want to remind you all that Wonder Woman knows that she can run across the battlefield with her shield, but she needs everybody else to have her back. Yes.
When it comes to children, like from 3 to 10, I would suggest from like a therapeutic standpoint to just be honest, but not too heavy, right? Just say like, hey, mommy's got an illness. It's called cancer. Doctors are giving mommy medicine that might make me a little sleepy, might make me lose a little hair, but daddy, grandma, somebody's going to still take you to soccer practice, swimming lesson. So you just know that there is that explanation. So they know there's a routine that's not going to be shaken up.
Okay, before we go on to some other questions, is there anyone out there that has some questions or inputs or anything?
Foundation that's local. they have angel packs. So you can go on their website and let them know the age of your child and get it's a stuffed animal and stories and information. So something that maybe wasn't around 10 years ago.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, one thing too, when I got diagnosed, because I'm a real estate agent, so I'm considered self-employed. So that too crossed my mind, like, oh my gosh, again, I'm self-pay. So I pay like a monthly premium to Health Partners, but that too is something that crosses your mind. I mean, I have a pretty good standard plan, nothing great, but nothing, bottom level, I would say middle. But again, the last thing getting a cancer diagnosis at 34 years old was the last thing on my mind. So I'm like, I'm going to have to really fall back on work. And so my mother let me know about the SAGE Foundation. They are amazing. They gave me a ton of resources, but also another thing is if they don't, from my understanding, I apologize if I'm giving wrong information, but this is how it's presented to me. Where you're at that moment in time, financial wise, you can qualify in the state of Minnesota they have a medical assistance for individuals with breast cancer or cervical cancer. So because I said, I am putting work on hold, I am choosing to stop. So they said, okay, well, you qualify now. So I was blessed to have, and still have, I guess you get it for like the next 5 years. So yeah, all of my treatments were covered. That's an amazing thing too. But also, yes, there are a ton of resources. They gave me a ton. I'm kind of looking back now, sad that I didn't really utilize much of the resources. I was blessed to be in a position that I really didn't need to. Like she said, my support, my friends, my family, significant other, everyone stepped in so greatly, but there are amazing, I'm talking house cleaners, food delivery, therapy, massage. There's just so much out there, but in the midst of it, driving back and forth to Mayo and just mentally and just there's a lot. So in some of those, to get those assistants, there's kind of hefty packets and, screenings and phone calls you have to do, which at that time, I'm like, I'm not even in the headspace to do this. I don't have the capacity, but there are some amazing resources out there. Anyone else? Okay. Well, next up, what we will do is talking with teens, what has helped children feel safe during difficult conversations, and what are age-appropriate ways to explain. I think we kind of touched on that a little bit. But basically, yeah, like I said, in my situation, I was very transparent with my teenager. He was fully supportive. And with my younger kid, it's just, again, not more so. I think you should keep it away from younger kids because, I mean, kids are a lot smarter than we think. They're likely going to pick up on something's different. Mine was more so personality type. Like my daughter is just such a worry bug that I just made the executive parental decision. Like, oh, let's just keep it under wraps right now. But also let's communicating with adult family members. How do you navigate different coping styles with family? What should people do when family members shut down, avoid the topic, or become overly protective? This is a good one. I would say, because I'm sure in this room, we can all agree that we all have people and different opinions about Western medicine. You're going to hear, oh, don't let them give you chemo or do this or don't do that. And you've got to shut the outside noise out and you've really got to dig deep and just do what's best for you. A prime example is with me. I went to somewhere local when I first got diagnosed, pretty much the first place that can get me in. They were trying to give me on the Keynote 522 regimen. That's kind of the standard of care for triple negative. And some fam like, you need to just do it. Stop putting it off. And I said, no. I want to get into Mayo and see what they have. So maybe I wouldn't have had the good experience that I did had I just listened to a family member, So it's not that I was wasting time or being in denial, but I just wanted to see what else is out there, clinical trial. Another thing is, some people, oh, you need to go just the holistic route. That's very touchy and personal. I kind of just let people, it's your life, your body, your call. I actually did an integrative, like, yes, I did the chemo, the radiation, the lumpectomy, but I also had a naturopath herbalist And we did water fasting. I changed up completely vegan, raw, fresh pressed juices. So in conjunction with that, I mean, people can do both theoretically. I of course ran through everything by my oncologist, and they were in support of it. But yeah, I was open with all my family and friends, but the few that did have other opinions, I just kind of like, okay, that's your opinion, that's great, but this is my life and this is how I'm going to do things. So.
My boys are now 23 and almost 20. And they have asked me questions. Mama, did you think you were going to die? And they're at an age now where I could say, yes, I was going to give you my guitar and I was going to give him my mandolin. And they're just shocked. And as you all know, it's part of your shadow being a survivor. Breast cancer is now part of my identity. And it's always there. And there are things that I can't share with my boys. Like, I do not dare tell them that my nipples are tattoos. Isn't that weird? Of all the different things that we've had to go through, what are we choosing to keep to ourselves? What do we choose to share with our girlfriends? What do we tell the stranger therapist you just met today? So thank you for having this be a safe place for me to talk about things.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back on like teenagers, right? They're trying to find their autonomy, they're exploring their independence, right? So when it comes to, I like to talk about attachment styles. Some teenagers might be avoidant and kind of like step away from it. Others might be very anxious and like try to over parentify, which they might try to take control of a lot of things. And it's suggested that we kind of give them the space to be in some sports like autonomous, like, hey, you can wash the dishes, but don't worry, you're not my therapist, you're not my doctor, I'll take care of that, right? And just give them that. And also they might be, Googling things that kind of like catastrophizing what's going on. In reality, you can like, hey, don't worry about it. Here's this from my doctor, here's a safe website, you can check out what's my prognosis, what am I doing right now.
Maybe you'll be a doctor when you grow up.
Okay, again, before we go on, any questions or yeah.
It's just come up. I was very open with my, gosh, I guess they were 8 or 9 when and very open, and they really struggled with not being, I asked them not to tell their friends, and it's kind of all come back up because their teacher was just diagnosed with breast cancer. So Jonas said to me, they were like, I told my friends that my mom had breast cancer then. And I was like, yeah, that's fine when the kids have more context.
Right.
But I couldn't control some of that narrative. And so I guess I'm probably looking for some confirmation that was right. But just because my kiddo is a processor and like wanted their friends, and also very open, wanted their friends to know what was going on in their life. And so they were kind of acting out a little bit. And that's what they were saying. They're like, well, I'm just mad because I can't tell my friends what's going on in my life. And I was like, that's super legit, bud. But just that part, I hadn't really thought through the like putting that. I could never have held it from Jonah. That would have been impossible. They're very curious. But I guess just comments maybe on like that friend part.
That's a really good piece. And I want to start out by saying there's no necessarily right or wrong answer. I think people have to do but you're right. That's a huge, I thought about that too, because if I told her, I fear, again, she was 7 at the time, or no, 6, about to be 7. So that's like, if she goes to school and start talking, and little kids think and talk about things from their point. So the last thing I wanted, like, oh, my grandma had cancer and she died. And then my daughters just think, oh my God, my mom's going to die. And so again, right or wrong, I don't know, but I'm like, I don't want to put that burden on my daughter. And then again, you're hearing things like, okay, but mommy has a different type. And then I didn't want her to start that affecting her in school and things. So it's a very tough kind of gray area. And it's hard to, if we were to talk about that with our kids, it's kind of hard because they may want to talk about that with their friends or their teacher or their school nurse or a therapist. So, and we can't control what the other end, how they perceive it and what they tell them. And so then it can kind of be a domino effect, but we just try the best we can every day. That's all we can really do. Try the best. And yeah.
Yeah, it's good to go with your gut. And you didn't have the words at that time, maybe to say, this is private. And you didn't know, you just knew that you wanted to keep it within the family. And yeah, but probably because kids are going to hear other stories and you weren't ready to explain that there's other stories. So you did great, Mom.
Yeah, and I want to hit on that. You are bringing to the surface something that is an uncomfortable truth, that cancer is an individual diagnosis, but it impacts the entire family, right? And again, you're trying to protect your family, right? And trying to like, hey, let's just have this conversation just within the family, the inner circle. But it takes a village, it's a support system. So, I'd also echo what all these ladies said, that you did a good job.
Hey, so I'll just say I'm a student as well, so I'm learning. And you mentioned a lot about the family, kind of had that foundation and being able to communicate within that space. I think you mentioned a little bit about the provider relationship. What I'm hearing is you probably have been having some providers that have been somewhat supportive, have provided some stability, so you could talk to your family a little bit more effectively and make more choices there. So I'm wondering if you have any experiences with, if you had like tension with a provider, or kind of like how that relationship has been, like what has the provider done well to kind of make you feel safe, and then like what have you done to maybe help with that relationship too?
That's really good. Now, when you say provider, are you more so like caregiver, family member, friend provider, or medical? Okay, got it. Just wanted clarity on that. That's awesome. So for me, I loved the way Mayo did it. So before you meet with any provider, you meet with almost I don't even know her role. It was really unique. Nothing I've ever experienced down here in the cities, but she sits down with you and she just wants to get to know you. What does your family dynamic look like? What do you do for work? What do you do? And then based on, it's almost like a psychological piece. And she's like, okay, I'm going to hand pick. And it was so funny because my oncologist, my surgeon, and even I think too, that's important when I went to surgery. Do you feel more comfortable with a woman surgeon or a male, or are you open? And just someone like, it was just, once I met my provider team, it was just like a perfect match. So I like that she almost had like maybe a psychologist sat down. And I did tell them, like, I am not the one to say I'm against getting chemotherapy, but I said, is there some clinical trial out there where I don't have to get so much right away? So she knew every providers are different too. Some are standard. Nope, we need to do standard of care. And some are more, so she handpicked a provider team. And I really liked that because I felt they listened to me. They genuinely cared. They gave me, so I would say from a provider standpoint, it has to be the right fit. I don't think it's necessarily anything a provider can necessarily, well, yeah, there are some things providers, I guess, can do wrong. But for me, it just had to be the right fit. Because they heard me and like, nope, we understand and we hear you. Yeah, let's try. And that's how the whole I Spy 2 clinical trial came about. Again, there's phases where you start out with a little chemo med. If it works, great, we'll keep you on there. If we're not seeing progress, then maybe we need to add another med and I had a whole care team behind me who was supportive of that, versus when I went to Methodist in St. Louis Park is when I first, just because they had the first opening, they were gun-ho set on, nope, Keynote 522 is a standard of care for clinical or for triple negative, and you should get a port like tomorrow. I'm like, okay. So that wouldn't have been the right fit. Not saying that wasn't a good provider, it just wasn't a good fit for me and how I wanted to do things. So
I went to Methodist, and the Cancer Center is a really long name that starts with an F. And I called it the Effin Cancer Center. Now I can pronounce it, Frauenschuh. But my oncologist was like my younger brother's age. And he was calm and loving and sat with me and shared what was going on at his house. He had 2 little boys at home, and then they got pregnant with their third during the time he was treating me. So it was really fun to give him advice and say, oh, you're, cruising for a bruising with that third baby coming and all that. So that was what was really key, is having that close sister brother relationship with my oncologist. Did we answer your question? Okay.
Yeah, just.
He's your friend?
Oh yeah, he's a buddy of mine. Good question, Doug. I was gonna say disclaimer. I am a provider. Right? Mental health is healthcare.
Yeah,
right?
you are a provider.
Yeah, and like you guys echoed earlier, that you are the expert. You know your body. That semantic connection, and it comes down to that therapeutic alliance, right? If you feel like you have a good connection with your provider, it means a lot. It changes the dynamic of your progress.
And one thing that I want to add too is, I really like what you said, a good relationship with your provider. I felt that I had a great relationship, so that we already have enough going on in our lives with the whole cancer journey, to have a provider that we don't think is listening to us, or like, oh, I'm just another patient that you see. Don't ever feel scared if you're getting those vibes to maybe ask for a different provider or something. But I felt such a great relationship with my provider, and that was game changing to me. So
yeah, I've never been a personality that will speak up for myself when I'm with any kind of authority or that situation. But it took a cancer diagnosis for me to say, I don't ever want to see that nurse again. Or, hey, stranger man substituting in the school that I'm teaching at, you do not speak to me like that. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. Being diagnosed with cancer is such a terrible, awful thing, but you bloom into something new and the person that you need to be for yourself.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And another thing too, just to add before we go on to the last thing, is something as small as, I told my provider out the gate, I'm an open book. I want you to be an open book with me. Please share just anything. Like, for an example, they said, well, most people want you to do a port, but we can go right. You have great veins in your hands. We can go right through the veins in your hand. I'm like, great, let's do it. And I just like that the provider gave me that option. And that's what I said out the gate. And I think that's that psychologist, when she's figuring me out. So you're a type of person, you want options. You want she's feeling me out. And I'm like, looking back, that was great. So she could almost okay, this person, they have those personality tests. Okay, based on your personality, you would be a great fit for this provider and that one. And that's something that I hope continues all across the United States. Because for me, it made game changer, because no shade to where you went. My sister works there actually, but the provider at Methodist, it was not a good personality match. It wasn't. So had I been forced to or not spoken up, I probably would have had a terrible time. It just wasn't a good personality. So yeah, but great question. Now, speaking of providers and caregivers, next it's how can survivors communicate their needs without feeling a burden? What do caregivers wish they could say out loud but don't often? In practical ways, family can help communicate during long treatment. I'm not looking back at it, which, mind you, I'm not far from this journey. I'm only a year out. I wish I would have asked for more. Although I did have a lot of support, I did not give direction on. People just did, okay, a little thing hey, I need you to help pick the kids up or do this. But I had kind of some resentment after, but I had to reflect and but Danella, you didn't tell people exactly they're not mind readers. So, So I just feel be open, but I didn't want to feel like a burden. And it's like, oh, I don't know. It was a weird psychological thing going through it. I think people going through it, it would be wise to seek a therapist, psychologist, talk things through. But again, I have so much on our plate during that time, but I wish I would have given caregivers, friends, family specific tasks. Like, hey, if you can just once a week help me do laundry or do this, or I really need you to do that. I think it would have been, not that I had a bad experience because people were great, but the little areas where I feel I would have liked it more help, I should have just simply asked for more help in those categories. So don't be scared to ever ask for specific needs or wants.
It's hard to know sometimes what you need. So default to food. What can I do to help? Send over a meal, please. Food is always great. And then that person feels good that they are helping provide a meal.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term food train. I don't know if you guys, yeah, that's always been something that's really helpful. And just to add that, I would argue that mental health is medical care, and having whether it be therapists, individual therapists, or a support group, or even like a spiritual group, right? That should be a part of your treatment plan when it comes to your journey.
Is if someone, because sadly everyone in this room, we, myself included, we're going to meet someone or have a friend or family who sadly will have a cancer diagnosis. And if we don't know what to do in that time, do something like you said, food, regardless of what they have to eat. Or if you know they're going back and forth to appointments, hey, I'm going to give you a gas gift card. I know you have to drive all around town, or just something sweet and thoughtful. It doesn't have to be some grand gesture. And that's some of what my friends said. They're like, in that moment, we didn't know, do we bombard you and hold you and hug you, or like everyone's different. Some people are like, I need to just process this and be alone. So once I was able to calm down, I'm like, you know what, you're right. Because in that moment, I don't know what I wanted, So something as simple, I would say food. But yeah, like I feel like when I first got diagnosed, my first 2 weeks, I felt like I lived at going back and forth to appointments. So I put a lot of gas in my vehicle those first 2 weeks. Or just if they have kiddos, hey, I'm going to pick the kiddos. They can stay the night or weekend with me, or I'm going to take them to Sky Zone, or just little things that just basic things will make a world of a difference. So.
Before you move on, I realize I'm not an expert, so please don't take that. But I work with a lot of these nonprofits around the state who have a bunch of resources. And I had someone just the other day talk about an experience that they had where someone was telling them, well, I feel bad for asking for these resources or using these resources because there's probably someone out there who needs it more than I do. And they said, that's not your worry, that's our worry. So please take advantage of the resources. Don't feel bad about it. That's what they want to do, and they want to help you. So just a little plug.
Another thing that we were talking about in the hallway before we started is a lot of things, when survivors beat it, we are constantly worried about reoccurrence. Like, okay, what if this comes back? And that's no way to live either. So what I have done in my own life is, for one, I think mindset is everything. Like, you can think negative, but what is the term? Like, think of what if something won't happen? What if something will happen? Like, just have a positive mindset, but also pay attention to stats. So, for me, for an example, because I have no BRCA gene, no family history, I was stage 2 after all the water fasting and lifestyle change. I was actually stage 1, which is very interesting. Based on the size of the tumor, it literally shrunk. No lymph nodes, pathological complete response. My oncologist said, you have a 4% chance of this ever coming back. And if you hit year 2, with no reoccurrence, that drops even low. So I live with that. I don't fear living in of reoccurrence. I'm like, and the doctor, my oncologist really put something into perspective, said, even you with cancer, there can be some random person walking down the street that has greater chance than you. And I'm like, what? Explain that to me. They said, well, they could have a BRCA gene. They could be a heavy smoker, a heavy drinker, extremely overweight. So all of those things, they can be at greater risk than you. Live your life. And I'm just like, none of us are promised. We don't know what, you know, and I like what he said earlier, that it's a cell mutation. Because anyone who gets diagnosed, I'm sure we probably like, oh, what did I do wrong? Did I do this? Did I too much this? We'll drive ourselves crazy doing that. It's just something that happened, especially when you don't have a BRCA gene like I did. And what's crazy is I have an identical twin sister. She got, you know, tested right after me because we're twins. We're like, oh boy, and nothing. So I kind of lived with a little shame or guilt, very short little, because I have a positive mindset, but it was just mind boggling. Like, what did I do wrong? And I quickly, like, Danella, stop. It's nothing you quote unquote did wrong. It's just something that happened. You deal with it and you push forward. So just wanted to add that.
It does take a second. I realize that we are at time, but if there are any other questions, I know we went over on some of our other sessions, so please feel free to add questions if you need to go. We completely understand. Are there any questions before we wrap up? Perfect. Well, let's give a big round of applause for our panel. And just a quick note before you go, I do have to read this just because it's not from memory, but thank you for being here. We hope that you recognize that showing up in whatever way you did today, whether it's in the room or online or a combination of both, if you're watching this in the future, that you are nurturing yourself. You're doing the hard work to help yourself bloom. So keep that in mind. We do have our survivorship conference in April. That's going to be at the McNamara Alumni Center, and it'll be a similar type of day, but just in a bigger format. So we hope to see you there, and just thank you all for coming today. Appreciate it.